Seriously, can everyone just chill out about peptides?
Peptides.
I'm a big fan of peptides.
The fuss about peptides.
Huge topic.
Peptides is mad general.
I have no idea what peptides are.
Last month, in July of 2026, the US Health and Human Services assembled the Nerd Avengers to debate about whether or not the people should have increased availability to peptides. There were wellness influencers in one corner saying that peptides can treat anything from tummy aches to inflammation, but FDA experts in the other corner saying that the data's not enough. And after a 2-day spat, somehow the wellness influencers won. Today we're going to break down this peptides debate from the science up, everything from the chemistry to the regulatory. Now we'll try and answer the question, are peptides ready for broader public use? And like all things in science, the answer is not a simple yes or no. What's up, nerds? We're going to do a quick biochem pit stop before we get to the drama. Don't worry, I'll keep it short. Remember amino acids from grade 9 science? A C-terminal, an N-terminal, and a functional group in the middle. String a bunch of them together through some amide bonds, and you get a complete protein. They fold into complex 3D structures, which have a very specific bodily function. But if you only string a few of them together, you get these things called peptides, a much less complex structure that can have equally important biological effects. Depending on their chemical structure and where they're going in the body, they'll have different effects. Your body makes these naturally, but you can also administer exogenous ones, or ones that you can make in a lab. You definitely know of a few examples, such as Ozempic. It's a GLP-1, or glucagon-like peptide. Alternatively, you might have heard about them from your favorite podcaster or pseudoscientist on social media.
There's peptides. They help your body produce the hormones that it should have when you're younger and your body works better.
Including peptides for tissue healing and repair, as well as peptides that impact longevity and vitality.
But importantly, because they're so small and relatively easy to make, they're also relatively cheap to make. So labs in China will make them, people in North America will buy them, and then inject them hoping that they can stop fitting through doorways. And this is where the drama begins. On July 23rd, 2026, the FDA's Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee sat down for 2 days to decide whether 7 of these very popular peptides should go on something called the 503A bulks list. This would make it easier for compounding pharmacies to make peptides under specific manufacturing protocols and then sell them directly to consumers. What's most important to note is that this is not legally binding. They're not forced to actually implement anything. Okay, so then why do we even care about the opinions of a couple dorks? Historically, the FDA has overwhelmingly agreed with what these advisory committees vote for. And for a peptides market that's worth an estimated $2.2 billion, with some reports saying that millions of Americans are taking these research grade only peptides, it's easily one of the biggest gray markets in the world. Not debating on whether or not all peptides should be available or not, no. It's just a list of these 7. BPC 157, KPV, TB500, MOTS-C, Epidolon, and CMAX. And their promoted uses range from weight loss, muscle gain, neurological conditions, gastrointestinal issues, injury recovery, and anti-aging. Not a lot of curing diseases, a lot of health promotion. There were very clearly 2 distinct populations of voters on this advisory committee. Practically every peptide split the votes, with 6 of the 7 being voted in favor of expanding their access. To really understand the whole picture, we have to go into what each side was saying. The pro-peptide side was obviously claiming that these things work. There's at least some scientific data that shows that there are benefits for their certain disease areas. Notably, almost all of those are in rodent studies, but we'll get to that in a second. But the main thing they were advocating was actually to reduce harm. See, now because there's this gray market area, people are buying peptides from unlicensed, unregulated sources. Like imagine just injecting yourself with something that hasn't gone through a whole lot of rigorous testing. But it's technically not illegal, and if you think it's going to get you a sick pump, or maybe live an extra couple of years so you can spend some time with your grandkids, a lot of people will take the chance. They'll take on that risk. So Team Pro Peptides is saying, well, if millions of Americans are going to be buying them anyways, we might as well have some oversight on how they're prepared. But here's where the cracks start to show. Because of the 15 advisory committee members, 7 of them were related to companies that make peptides. Can you say conflict of interest, kids? Doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out that these people were probably voting in favor of the peptides, and then everyone else was saying no. Okay, so what were the naysayers saying then? Why did they vote no? Ironically enough, their main point is also around risk reduction. Forbes put out a great article summarizing this whole situation. I'm going to rip a quote from there because I think it sums up their position really well. Insulin revolutionized diabetes treatment, while GLP-1s have helped people with obesity and diabetes lose substantial weight and improve their health. Banting and best, let's go Canada. But just because 2 substances belong in the same chemical family does not mean they are equally safe or effective. Peer-reviewed scientific studies are needed to establish both. Could literally not have said it better myself. Across all 6 recommended peptides, high quality human evidence remains limited. Much of the available research consists of animal studies and small human trials without control groups. It's the lack of evidence doesn't prove these peptides are dangerous. It means researchers can't yet say with scientific confidence whether their claimed benefits outweigh their risks. That's really it. All they're saying is we need more evidence before we can confidently say yes. Despite what people think, mice and rats are not the same as humans. And this is where things get weird, right? The clinical trials exist. Why are we jumping the gun here? Why are we forcing ourselves to expand their access when there's not a lot of good quality data? If you don't know, here's how clinical trials work. Here's how drugs actually get approved. First, you have your preclinical work. This is where you're doing experiments in cells and mice and rats, etc. Then you go into phase 1. This is where you use a small number of patients to determine the safety and tolerability of a relatively high dose. Then you move into phase 2. You're trying to find that therapeutic window. At what dose do you start seeing side effects compared to the dose where you start to see those benefits? Then there's phase 3. This is the pivotal study where you have a lot of different patients, hundreds to thousands of patients. You're really refining that dosing schedule. And obviously, more people means more accurate data. If the data is convincing enough, this is where they get FDA approved. And then optionally, a phase 4 study where you're looking at longitudinal data after this drug has been approved. The FDA is reviewing things all the time throughout all of these phases. You have to publish all the data that you're collecting and get grilled by a bunch of different scientists. This system is designed to catch the failures. In their debate, they cited a phase 3 clinical trial from 2013 for something called taspoglutide. It's another one of these GLP-1 drugs similar to Ozempic. And basically what they found was at phase 3, so at the very end of the clinical trial process, there were significant errors in the manufacturing process that changed the peptide's amino acid sequence, which led to severe anaphylaxis in several patients. Basically outlining that at any point in the clinical trial, something can go wrong. And they're saying that those risks will become way higher if each individual compounding pharmacy is allowed access to manufacture these. And I totally agree with the naysayers. There are some therapies that come with high risk because you're treating a very deadly disease. Many different types of cancers, for example. Chemotherapy has high side effects, but those side effects are a minor problem compared to cancer. And that risk probably isn't necessary when it comes with maybe possibly getting more gains. I work in biotech, so I'm reading these types of studies all the time. It never ceases to amaze me how diligent companies have to be when they're trying to get their drug FDA approved. Companies have to be so specific about how they're testing a drug. They have to really hone in on what they want this drug to be approved for. Here's one example. It's only be used in patients Claudin 18.2 expression positive, so they have this certain cell receptor. I can't even pronounce this. HER2 negative advanced gastric/gastroesophageal junction adenocarcinoma in patients who have failed at least 2 prior lines of therapy.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So basically, if you're a patient that doesn't have this specific thing, you cannot get treated by it. And this is how most clinical trials work. On top of that, before they even ran this study, the researchers have to tell the clinical trial people, this is the type of benefit we want to see. We will be looking at these certain markers as our primary endpoints. If they don't pass their primary endpoints, they don't get approved. And this is a big issue I have with this whole peptides thing. I'm not saying they don't work, but people who advocate for them are just saying, oh, it helps with wound healing. What the fuck does that mean? Dude, show us some numbers of how much is going to help wound healing in what scenarios. We're not asking for too much. That's just the standard practice. But obviously, it's way easier to make money if you just say, oh, this is generally going to improve your life. Just trust me, bro. Than it is to run all these studies and convince people that it works in the way that you want to, and to have people stare at a bunch of numbers and graphs that they obviously don't know or care about. If they actually work, they will get approved eventually. Just relax. Anyways, the FDA really gets to decide whatever they want to do for next steps. My guess is they'll probably put it up to another vote since it was pretty obvious that all the scientists said don't approve these yet. But we'll really have to wait and see. A decision won't happen anytime soon. There's also a middle ground. They could start discussing other ways of trying to increase access without going too far into one direction. This Forbes article has a couple interesting ideas. Don't know if I agree with a lot of them, but I'll put the link in the description so you can check them out yourself. But here's what I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on peptides? If you have used peptides, what are your thoughts? Like, why do you continue using them? Stop using them? What have you seen? Any evidence that have really changed your mindset on them? I'd love to hear them down below. But that's all for me today. Thank you all for stopping by, and you stay classy, nerds.